So this is the new M1 Mac Mini. Now, you guys probably have, if you've watched the channel for a while, you know I don't do a lot of content on computers, but this is one I can't ignore. This is one that I really wanted to try out, and I was actually really confused if I should or shouldn't. But, you know, looking at all the videos that have come out recently on these, I just couldn't ignore it. This is a fantastic, you know, new product that I just can't avoid. So this has, I went for the absolute base spec model. This is the 8 gigs of unified memory, 256 gig SSD, and of course the 8-core M1 chip. So the M1 chip is Apple's replacement to using Intel. They've been using the Intel chips for a very long time now, and finally they have moved to their own chipset. So they actually, you know, Mac Mini was not something I was really looking to buy. I was always saying I will buy it if the 12-inch MacBook version comes back with it. That's always been kind of the rumor that was slated, that, you know, that the 12-inch MacBook would be revived with an Apple SoC. Ever since it came out, it was kind of the guess that Apple did that as an experiment so that it could potentially experiment with a lightweight fanless computer with their own chip. But, you know, unfortunately with the launch, we got three computers with it. We got this. We got the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, the 13-inch one that got these chipsets. So I'm going to guess that more will come, but the Mac Mini, the MacBook, is just something that isn't really happening. This, the Mac Mini, why I got it is because it's cheap. It's $699. $699 is a crazy deal for this, and I decided, you know what, let's try out what the most affordable Mac can do, and I'm going to be comparing it to a bunch of different things. So let's pull the Mac Mini out. Let me grab this out of here. Let me put this to the side for one quick second. Let's see what we get inside the box. Just some documentation that isn't very well put in. It was kind of half sticking out. What else you get? Mac Mini, and you get an Apple sticker, which is space gray. That's weird. Or is it silver? Okay, it's silver. It looks space gray for a second. And then you got the power cable, and that's it. So just a normal power cable here with a 2-prong pin. Nothing much to see inside the box. Let me put this aside for a second. So let's look at the Mac Mini itself. It looks very similar to the Mac Minis of past, but what this is not a design change, it's an internal change. So let's pull out the plastic. So the bottom looks pretty similar to the Mac Minis of past. There's a plastic covering all the I/O here, so let's pull it off. All right, there we go. And I've actually got, okay, so this looks quite empty. Like, this is a very limited I/O selection here. I knew it was not as good as the old outgoing Mac, but, you know, I didn't do too much research on this on purpose to kind of be surprised by it. And I'm surprised with how little there is on offer. So right here I have my late 2014 Mac Mini, and you guys can see comparatively I/O wise, just look at the difference. So this one's got a separate input for audio and for output and input. It's got an SD card reader. It's got 4 USB-As, which are, I believe, 3.0. I could be wrong about that. 2 Thunderbolts, plus an HDMI, and Ethernet, and then the power. This has 2 USB-Cs, 2 USB-As, 1 headphone jack, and an HDMI. That's about it. And this is just a huge area for fans. So that's just for airflow. So pretty much, you know, the design is exactly the same. Like, they are the size, the dimension, it's all the same, but the I/O has completely changed, which I am not a fan of. But this is, again, a very base model, so I'm hoping in the future we get a little bit more of a decked out Mac Mini. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head over, connect it up to the computer, set it up, and then I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a look at the benchmarks and compare it to the 2014 Mac Mini, and just see where it stands as it is. Okay, so let's start off and look at some Geekbench results. So on the left, we've got the Mac Mini scores. So on Geekbench, you can see the single core score is 741 and the multi-core is 1609. Moving over to the right, the M1 Mac Mini, you can see a Geekbench score of 1743 on single core and 7674 on multi-core. So a pretty much night and day difference, especially on the multi-core score. It's crazy. Now remember, both of these were really similarly priced new, so just crazy what the difference can make. Now let's look at the compute scores on Geekbench as well. So this is an OpenCL score. The Mac Mini has a 4441 score, whereas the M1 Mac Mini has a 19,681 score. That's more than 5 times the score almost. Actually, not more than, but right about 4 point something, so around 5 times the score, which is crazy. Honestly, just, you know, crazy. Let's move on and look at the Cinebench scores. This is also a pretty big gap. So on multi-core, we got a score of 1724 versus the 7755 of the M1 Mac Mini. But the surprising thing for me was, look at where the Mac Mini is able to stay with other processors. So, you know, it's fighting it out with 12-core Xeons compared to some of the other things, which is just crazy. And then looking at the Mac Mini, it's dead last, which is no surprise. It's a 6-year-old i5 dual-core machine. It's not going to do that great. Let's move on and look at the single-core scores as well. So we got 670 on the Intel Mac Mini, the 2014, and you got 1519 on the M1 Mac Mini. So again, not that surprising, just really impressive scores all around. Now, this one is it's something that's obvious, but just like it goes to show. So my Mac Mini has a traditional hard disk drive, and look at the speeds. It gets 81 megabits a second on the disk write test and just 68 on the read, compared to 2,192 and the 2,800 read. So just night and day difference. SSDs and flash drives are honestly, they're so much of a big jump over hard disk, it's hard to even justify anything else. So now that we've looked at these, it's obvious that a 6-year-old Mac Mini is not going to perform to any close level. Any 6-year-old computer won't perform. But let's bring out the 2018 MacBook Pro that cost me about $4,000. So this is the system I use to edit all my videos. So let's go back to the top. Look at the single core score. It is mind-blowing to me how the MacBook Pro, this has a 6-core i9, remember that. It got a single core score of 753 versus the 1743 of the M1 Mac Mini, and it had a multi-core score of 7674 versus the 4893. Crazy results. At least on the compute benchmark in Geekbench, the scores are pretty close. They're within about 700 of each other. So not the biggest difference, but still, you know, it's impressive just to see how good the M1 Mac Mini is. Moving on, let's look at the Cinebench scores. So single core, on the multi-core, you got 7755 as we saw earlier on the M1 Mac Mini, and the 2018 MacBook Pro has 5850. And really, it's crazy just comparing the two. Remember that the iMac is the Mac Mini is a $700 machine. Single core CPU is at 1519 versus the 1157. Again, you know, it's not a huge gap, but definitely a much bigger gap. Finally, let's just look at the disk speeds just to be equivalent, and they're pretty much within each other. The write speed is a little bit higher on the MacBook, but the read speeds are a little bit higher on the Mac Mini. All in all, not the biggest difference, but these are all benchmark. These are synthetic tests. This is not anything that will recommend or show me real-world usage. So what I'm going to do now is move on and give you guys a real-world comparison between this M1 Mac Mini and my 2018 MacBook Pro. Okay, so this is a editing export time from the M1 Mac Mini. So I've got a 23-minute video. This is the iPhone vlog that I'm going to be uploading on my channel. And this is a pretty decently sized video. So it's got, you know, intro, it's got some little date, time, kind of those compilations. There's transitions, there's music all throughout. So there's a lot going on here. So this video in total is 3.5 gig. It's 1080p at 60 FPS. And of course, let me just show you guys all the other settings if you do want to see. So it's formatted for a computer. It's got the H.264 better quality codec. So that's what I've generally always used for my videos. So this is what I'm going to stick to on this as well. So let me just show you guys. I've got a timer ready here. So the second I hit, so I just got to actually hit next on this for a second here. And then, yes, save to desktop. So 1, 2, 3. So the second I hit save, I will also start the timer. So 1, 2, 3, and start. So got the timer started. And the export has started as well. So you guys can see sharing right there. All right, so writing. So it should take a couple of minutes. I'm going to keep a track on this, keep an eye on it. And when it gets close to being over, I'll come right back. Okay, so it just went from like 90-something% all the way to 100 in the moment's notice. So I couldn't get the entire thing. But yeah, video completed. Stopped at about 19 minutes and 23 seconds. So 23 minute video took about 20 minutes to export. Not the greatest, but honestly, I'm not sure if my MacBook Pro is going to do any better. So let's try out the same export on my MacBook Pro. All right, so here I've got the same project on my MacBook Pro loaded up, copied over the entire project, same exact thing, same 23-minute file in, where is it? Right here, I'm sorry, 1080p 60 FPS. So we're gonna go ahead and do the same share. All right, Apple 1080. You guys can see settings, same, H.264, computer, MP4, 60 FPS, and it is 3.5 gigs, so same file size. So pretty much identical settings. So if you remember, the Mac Mini took 19 minutes and 23 seconds. Let's go ahead and reset this. And I'm going to go ahead and hit next on this and save it to my desktop. So save, so 1, 2, 3, start. All right, I've got this started and I've got this exporting as well. So let's see how long it takes. So again, 19 minutes is the mark to beat. I honestly don't know. This could go either way. The performance of the M1 Mac Mini has really surprised me. So you never know, but let's see. Okay, so an update. We're at 61%. It's only 6 minutes, so this is definitely on par to beat the Mac Mini. When I think about it, not that surprising, but I will say, can you hear that? That is the fan going crazy. It's been kicked on and going crazy for a couple of minutes now. The Mac Mini didn't even turn on the fan the entire way through, so thermally, the Mac Mini is just way better. It's like unbelievable. This has been full speed, and I bet you it's going to go full speed all the way to the end, and probably a couple minutes after too. And it's not that hot. It's only like, what, 59 degrees outside, so inside is not that hot either. So this should not be running this hot, but yeah, that's just the thing with the MacBook Pro. The Intel ones run super hot. So again, at about 7 minutes and we're at 66%. So this will definitely beat the Mac Mini, but I'm impressed at how quiet the Mac Mini managed to be throughout the entire edit and export. Okay, so similar to the Mac Mini, it was about 90 something and it just went right to completed. So the grand total time, as you guys can hear, the fans are still going absolutely crazy. So the grand total time to export this file was 14 minutes and 50 seconds. So this is, mind you, a almost $4,000 machine with a dedicated graphics chip, and it only beat my $700 Mac Mini by 5 minutes on a 23-minute project. So just, that's mind-boggling, right? Just the price difference. Sure, this is a MacBook, so you can carry it around, unlike the Mac Mini, but still, the performances just go crazy. So imagine what the next MacBook Pro could do with an Intel, with an Apple chip instead of an Intel chip. That's just crazy to me. So yes, this is definitely faster. So even though every other benchmark was a little bit different, this one definitely, that dedicated graphics card is showing its prowess, and I think that's just something you can't ignore. So that was it. That was the M1 Mac Mini, my initial impressions and tests with it. And honestly, I'm walking away very surprised with the results. Just remember, $700 gets you incredible performance. And honestly, Mac Mini is looking more and more like a good deal every second I think about it. The one clear downside here is the lack of I/O, but I think as time goes on, we're going to see more Mac Mini models, and even if you buy one that's $1,000 or $1,100, I think it would be a fantastic deal, given it gets a little bit more of an upgraded CPU and more I/O. It's just, I was so surprised how well it kept up with my MacBook Pro. Of course, what we learned here was benchmarks don't say everything, even though every benchmark was clearly skewed towards the M1 Mac Mini. In a real-world test of editing video, you saw that the MacBook Pro actually won out, so it got a faster export time on a video. Now that just happens, that's the reality of it. Real world usage isn't exactly what a benchmark will represent. So that being said, it had no business being as close as it was. It was 4 minutes off, and 4 minutes, it's not a big difference, especially when you consider the fact that this is there is an almost $3,000 price gap between the two. So yeah, just very interesting results. Let me know what you guys think about the new M1 Max, especially the Mac Mini. I think that besides the I/O, there is nothing that is wrong with this computer. It's honestly one of the best deals in computing you can get right now. That's it for this one, guys. If you haven't already, be sure to follow me on social media. I'll have all the handles right here on the screen, and of course down in the description as well. If you have any more questions, feel free to hit me up down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.